put because you also think too, like, well, every brand is so custom. I can't possibly teach people how to make video because it's so unique. And you know what? It's actually, there's a foundational narrative to all video content, and it has to do with good storytelling and good characters and good writing and finding out what people like to watch, and all those skills are teachable. So it made me realize that, like, you know, small businesses don't have big brand access, but they need it. And so I'm that liaison of, like, I have access to these big brands, and we just take what we're sort of doing there in the field, and I take the stuff that can be applicable to, like, a solopreneur who has no marketing budget.
Welcome to Future Driven. I'm Adam Kopp, and on this podcast, I talk with entrepreneurs and industry professionals about the challenges and the wins in their business. See the vision, drive the future. Welcome to episode 10 of the Future Driven podcast. Today, I have Patrice Poltzer from Patrice Poltzer Creative. Thank you so much for joining me today, Patrice.
No problem. I'm glad to be here.
Well, Patrice and I have known each other for over 20 years. We went to high school together, and we reconnected over Instagram because, honestly, Patrice, I was just infatuated with your Instagram stories, and I'm sure I'm not the only one to tell you that, because you put some good effort into your stories, and I really got to know a lot about your life because of that. So tell us a little bit about that. You know, what is your day-to-day life with Instagram stories?
Yeah, you know what? It's so interesting because it all started back with Snapchat. Do you remember Snapchat?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, at the time I was still at the Today Show, and I remember one of, like, the young interns who I loved was like, right before I was going on maternity leave with my second kid, she's like, Patrice, you have to get on Snapchat. And I'm like, I am way too old for Snapchat. She goes, no. She goes, people are going to dig it. You got to get into Snapchat. So I remember with my second kid, I literally had my own world. I was in this Snapchat bubble, and, you know, I was just kind of, because motherhood is lonely. And especially when you're, like, on leave. I'm a worker. I love my job. So actually the transition to maternity leave was really challenging for me. So this Snapchat world sort of opened up this whole other world, so to say. So I started with Snapchat back in 2016. So when Instagram stories came, I was already just so used to kind of my poor husband just putting the camera or the video in our house that it just sort of became a natural extension. And now we're in a time where your business life and your home life kind of intertwine. So it's been this really natural just sort of platform that I've been using for a lot of years. So,
well, I think you do amazing at it, and I've enjoyed it personally. And I do agree with the notion of blending family and business. And I think entrepreneurs can do that. I think that's a little bit more natural. So I like it. So well done. And it was funny, right before we jumped on, I was like, let's just see how Patrice is doing. And I went, I saw like 20 stories. I'm like, wow, she is busy. You know, and so, and speaking of busy, congratulations on your third child. So that is awesome. 3 boys, right?
Yeah, you're talking to a unicorn. People in New York City do not have 3 children. I mean, people in New York usually stop at 1. So The fact that we have 3 children, I mean, when we walk down the street, people are like, oh God, it's like they have like a look of sympathy for my husband. So I just had a baby. So, well, I have a 6-week-old, I have a 4.5-year-old, and then I have a 7-year-old. So in a New York City apartment. So it's been an interesting time. It's a full house, but, you know, it's fun. I wouldn't have it any other way. So, I mean, I need your advice and your roadmap for how to have 3 boys. I'm outnumbered here.
I'm right there with you. My boys are they're 3, 5, and 7. So somewhat close, but yeah, newborn is a whole different ballgame. So but I think you can handle it. I can tell.
Yeah. Oh, but it's all they do is sleep. I'm like, no, they don't. And they don't sleep at any schedule. So you're just like at a whim. You can't, and they don't sleep at night. So this whole I kind of forgot it as well. It like, when my husband tried to convince him to have a third, I'm like, newborns are so easy. I can do my business. I'll just, have the baby born Beyonce by my foot and close deals and work on. It's just like, woo! I'm like in another reality fantasy land. So
Nice.
anyway.
So, okay, well, I love it, and I definitely want to talk a little bit more about your current company now. But give us a brief background of your career. How did you get to today? What was your career like?
I'm actually a very late bloomer, which is why whenever I hear, younger people in their 20s get really angsty about where they are or where they're not or where they think they should be. And I think Instagram and social media has contributed to this overall sense of anxiety of like, if you're 25 and you're not selling a company or running a successful online business, then, you're not worth anything. Right. So I empathize with them because I was an intern at 29 years old. I was very lost in my 20s, didn't really know what I was doing. I sold books door to door for 3 years all over the country in my 20s. And not Bibles, but education books and pure commission, 100% commission. And so it was like pretty intense. And so just to show you how lost I was, when you're selling books door to door for 3 years after graduating from college, I just didn't really know where I was supposed to be. And so funnily enough, and I'll give you the Cliff Note version, but I ended up selling to a really big, my last summer I was in California and I ended up selling I was really good at selling books. I made a lot of money when I was 20. It took me until I was in my 30s to actually get to what I was earning when in my mid 20s from book selling. And I remember I sold like everything to this dad. He's like, I wasn't going to buy anything. He goes, and he was a big producer for American Idol at the time. Okay. And he's like, you need to get into TV. He goes, I would hire you on the spot. He goes like, would you? So anyway, he kind of got me thinking. And when I went back to Chicago, where I'm from, I ended up getting an internship at WGN. And then I did some really embarrassing show called The Nude Hippo. And that is an actual name of the show. Like, try telling your parents that you're hosting a show called a Nude Hippo show. And so, again, very lost. But I kind of went on this path of, I'm going to be a really serious reporter. And so I did the whole like door to door trying to get a job at these small town stations. And I could not get hired for the life of me. I must have applied to 200 reporter jobs. I mean, I couldn't even get a job in like market 280. It was just like, what is going on? And I realized a time later when finally a news director in Illinois sat me down, he goes, I'm going to show you the video of the woman that I just hired. I want to compare her to you. And I was like, oh, okay. So she puts my reel in, my video reel that at the time it was probably like DVD or something, Yeah. And I was the host of a variety show called The Nude Hippo. We weren't doing hard news journalism. I was literally at the Star Trek convention dressed as Princess Leia reporting with Shrek. And I was, doing really weird things. And he put me up there, and then he stopped it, and then he put the other woman's reel, and she was, reporting live from the White House, here is Obama. I mean, it was, and I remember staring at it. He goes, this is who we just hired. And I was like, oh, he goes, you're a little rough. He goes, you're really rough around the edges. He goes, you need to get like refined. He goes, you should go to grad school. Anyway, so I ended up going to grad school for a year at Northwestern, and they had a 1-year program, and that kind of sent me off. And so when I was an intern at 29, that's why I was an intern at 29, because I didn't really get my footing until I was almost 30. But then things happened quickly. I moved to New York, and it happened quick. So that's a long answer, but the Today Show was, yeah.
Okay, so then you come to New York, and then where do you go to work?
Oh my God, well, that's the other thing. I came to New York right in 2009, which is right after the crash, right, of Lehman Brothers. It was like a horrible time, and it's similar to now. I mean, maybe not as bad as now, but very bad for the media.
Right.
But at the time, when I was interning at CNN, it was in London. So I had met, at the time, we weren't like my now husband, but I remember thinking, I couldn't get a job in London because of all the crashes. And so I had to move back to America. And I remember thinking, I can't make a move to Chicago. I just like, it's too, London to Chicago just felt too big of a jump, but New York felt, so I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to go to New York, make it easy on him because he was going to move to the States. And so I went without a job. So I, again, pounded the pavement, and I ended up getting the overnight writing shift for the Asian markets in Bloomberg. I knew nothing. And I remember saying to the guy when I got hired, I was like, I couldn't even believe it. I'm like, are you sure? Like, have you looked at my resume? And I literally, the first day at work, I started at 2 a.m. And I remember it was just in the fire. And they're like, all right, here's your story that you need to write. And I remember on my phone being like, what is a bond? What is a stock? Like, can you define it? I mean, it was just, so I did this insane overnight job where I was like feeding the anchors who were reporting from Beijing, and I was their like liaison in New York. So that was my foot in the, but you know what? Like I just needed a job, like, and I got that job. And so I just went with it. And like, I'm like, that was my survival. If I didn't have that job, I would have had to move back to Chicago. And at this time I'm like 30, you know? So I'm like, I need to start making money. Like everyone I knew was like third career. Like some people were already like running things and promoted. And I'm like, I'm still an intern. I felt really self-conscious about all of that. It's to this day, I still like, it's taken a lot of just acceptance, but it was really embarrassed. Like I remember even at Bloomberg, I was starting lower and people always thought I was younger than what I was. And even then I was like, because I should have been higher up, you know, for where I was, but I was just starting out. So then at Bloomberg, yeah.
So then what happened next? So, I mean, so that you said that was 2009. So then, you know, kind of at what point were you able to join the Today Show?
So I was at Bloomberg for like a year, and it was a shit show. I mean, it was just like the worst working environment. So, I mean, the fact that I made it a year was pretty good, but made it a year, and I saw the writing on the wall. I'm like, I'm going to get, like, everyone was getting fired around me or laid off. And so I ended up getting laid off. So this was like a year later. And I remember being like, oh God, here we go again. So, I was laid off, and I, again, just started like pounding the pavement. You know, those selling book door to door, I never would have connected the dots. But now that I have some perspective, I just didn't care. I got slammed doors in my face for 3 years every day that I was like, okay, it didn't faze me to the rejection. There was so much rejection, and the reporter job just rejected all the time. So I ended up getting a coffee meeting with someone who knew someone who knew someone who knew someone. Because when you're trying to look for a job, it can get so emotional that I just made it very numbers. I was like, every week I need to meet 10 people. I don't care if it's coffee, face-to-face, phone. And I just kept to this, like, as long as I hit 10 people every week, I didn't care. It was the law of the averages. And so eventually the random person that I had coffee with, who was from person number 4 from week 2, like, you know, he's like, oh, you should meet my boss at NBC, or this guy at NBC. He has a new unit at NBC and it's digital and maybe he's hiring. And so I got a meeting with him. And it's funny because he's still my mentor to this day. He's one of those guys that's like ahead of his time. And at the time, he started at NBC, the unit back in 2011, 2012, where it was digital content, but editorial, or not ads, like more editorial content for brands. And at the time, that was just like, you know, wait, what? Digital on NBC.com? No one looks at that crap. Like, but he would go to the ad sales team and say, give me $200,000 of your little budget for the $2 million GMC that they're buying all these commercials. Just give us $200K and we will make them a boatload of content. And we're going to put it on all the different properties at NBC. And they're like, okay. But anyway, he ended up hiring me, and he told me, he goes, you were so underqualified for the job but he goes, when I found out that you sold books door to door, I hired you because I'm like, I can teach this chick how to edit. I can teach this chick how to shoot video. I can teach her how to like go, but I can't teach the ethic. So to this day, he always talks about it, that like, you know, I wasn't going to hire you. And when you started talking about book door to door, I was like, I'm hiring her. So that was my step into NBC. So I was actually at another job at NBC before I got my foot into the Today Show. So it was a little bit of a side step, but that's where I learned how to shoot video and edit. And this is back in 2012, where it was just starting to like, I feel like the technical skills now that all these content creators, it's just, you need them now. It's like, if you don't have them, then go figure out how to do it. Where at the time, the fact that I had them was the only reason I was able to get a producer job at the Today Show, because I didn't have the experience necessarily, but they just hired me for my technical skills because I was in the field all the time.
So you learned how to shoot and edit and kind of run behind the camera. Do you consider yourself more in the director side of things now? Because I've seen kind of some of your work is, you feel it appears to be that you're more in the director role than you are like the videographer role. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, I mean, my website is so old, by the way. It's like, I haven't updated it in about 4 years. But yeah, I'd say now it's, I'm more of a director. So it's working a lot with the brands, right? Like I'm the point person, and then I have a crew. But you know, it's interesting. My whole team are all former journalists. That's our superpower. I feel that that's like really important when we work with brands. It kind of gives us a little bit of a differentiator in like New York agency world. So these are all former people from NBC or the documentary world. And so it's my little team. And yeah, I'm kind of the liaison between them. But then, you know, now I teach entrepreneurs of small businesses who can't afford to outsource production to a company like yours or a company like mine even.
Right.
I teach them how they can use video to grow their business. And that's required me now to go back on camera and showing up on Instagram stories in a way that I haven't had to be on camera per se in a while. Right. Since my classy nude hippo days.
Okay, so when did you, I guess, as you did the Today Show, you did CNN. I think that, I mean, those stories are great because, you know, it sounds like, you know, that those lessons and that work ethic that you learned at pounding the pavement selling books is what got you the foot in the job or the foot in the door for that job. And then you just kind of worked your way up there. And I assume, I can see that work ethic in everything you do. I mean, even down to Instagram stories, like it's a lot of work to put together that content. So I think that's huge. So once you did Today Show, CNN, when did you officially start your own company? What year was that?
My business. So no, this is interesting too. And this is also, you know, with all these like takeaways here, whenever I hear people's backstories of where they got to be, you know, I'm always kind of like looking for how does it apply to me, you know? And I do think that like sometimes those mundane jobs, or even if you feel like you're not where you think you should be, right. And it's not always tied to an age. You can be 40 or 50 and feel that way. For sure. But I do believe that as long as you're like learning new skills, even if you don't, like, I didn't want to be an editor. I didn't want to be a shooter, but I knew that if I could learn these skills, then hey, why not? So I just think it's important to always be at least expanding your knowledge bucket. If you are in a position or in a company where you're feeling twitchy, learn something new and network with people outside your own department, and that'll come back to you. So sorry, kind of shift gears. So again, when I was on listen to this weird story, power of social media. So when I was on maternity leave with my second kid, I was like Snapchat crazy. I got a random email on LinkedIn from this dude. He's like, this is going to sound really weird, because it was all mom content. It was like, all right, I'm going to go breastfeed now. I mean, it was just like, whatever. And this guy is like, this is going to sound weird. He goes, but I'm obsessed with your Snapchat. He goes, and I've been following your Snapchat for like 3 months. He goes, I'm the CEO of a company. You know, it was like him and a big Silicon Valley, who's still very big now. They bought all these blogs in 2016, and they were trying to, and they're still around, to monetize them into the digital space. He goes, we just bought a parenting brand that's huge in Facebook and online, but they have no video presence. Would you want to come and run our editorial team for parenting content? So I ended up leaving the Today Show when I was on maternity leave to go to this startup. I thought it was my dream job. It was not my dream job, but that was a stopgap. So it was actually a really, really negative, it was pretty negative experience. And so I was disillusioned. I'd left this amazing job. I'm at this startup. I'm like, this is bananas. Like, this is so toxic. And like, I ended up leaving, like after only 3 months. And I was like, I can't, my boss like, you can come back. And I'm like, oh God, they threw like a going away party for me. Like Patrice is getting out of the Today Show. People die here. Like, no one leaves the Today Show. It's like, you know, you're like forced out or you die. So my boss is like, get the hell out of here. Go do something interesting, you know? So I was like, I can't go back to my job 3 months later. I was like so embarrassed. But at the time, my husband had left his corporate job to start his own thing, and I was the health insurance. So it was really scary. This is like 2017, the top of 2017. So I had like a really young baby, a toddler, and I had just basically gotten like let go of in my dream job. And I'm like, oh my God, like we have no health insurance. So, well, we had a Cobra, right? For whatever, like the thing. And so at that point in time, it was either like go back to the Today Show, which is a great option. Today Show is an amazing place to work. Or I'm like, you know what, I could do something different. And so without knowing at all what I wanted to do, I was like, you know what, maybe I'll try to make some video for brands or a business, you know, and you know, that's how it happened. And so I got like one client. I mean, it's just so embarrassing. And because I look back, you know, I remember I didn't have a website. And so I slapped up a Squarespace and I remember there was this one girl I met whose dad is a huge real estate guy in New York. And we totally hit it off at this networking event. She's like, I want you to do all our video. She's like, they're a VC company. They funded all these brands. She's like, you can just be our point person. I'm like, oh, sweet. This is amazing. So she's like, send me your pitch. Like, I make the decisions. Basically, you're fine. So I sent her my pitch or a bid. She asked me to bid on this. Her father's house was a house in Billions in the HBO series. And they were doing this huge like summit there. And she's like, you can do the summit. So I pitched her and I didn't hear back for like a week, and it was happening soon. And so I remember she called me and she goes, can I be dead honest with you? And this is like 7 months into me deciding to go off on my own.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, like, sure. She goes, what in the actual fuck is your website? I was like, I swear to God, that's a dead quote. I go, wait, what? I go, what do you mean? She's like, no, seriously, Patrice, like, what the? And I kind of thought about it from her brain. She goes, I have to pitch you to my team. Like, you know, you weren't the only, you know, I had to pitch you. And I'm like, you showed my so my website, my old website was just a one pager, and it was me with a giraffe. The giraffe was licking my face, and I had like headphones on. I mean, it was like, hey, like the about me was just like, hi guys, like I'm Patrice. I mentioned nude hippo in my bio. She goes, I mean, it looks like a bad, like one man, one woman band, like National Geographic field reporter, which I was not. And so I realized then and there that I'm like, oh my God, I need to level up. So it was. So anyway, so 2017 is when I made the leap to start my own thing.
But what happened? Did you get that job?
No, I did not get that job. And she is the reason. And that was 2000s. I haven't changed my website since then, but I'm like, I need to start thinking of myself. And I think a lot of females do this. It's a man's world. And it's changing now, but even in New York, like back in 2017, I'd be like, I remember I had a big pitch meeting with Paper Magazine. And I was like with 5 dudes, and granted, Paper Magazine is like very, you know, artsy and stuff, but I remember they walk in, they're like, where's your team? And I'm like, oh, I mean, at that time I was like relying on random freelancers, and
Right.
I had no structure, no system. I would just like show up and be like, can we do video? So I just realized like I'm not gonna, this is not a, but I realized too, this is actually not a business model. I'm not gonna make it. I kind of thought of myself in my brain as like, oh, I'm just trying this out. I'm gonna go back to get a real job. Like I almost thought of myself as a freelancer. And I think when, you know, your thoughts matter. And so I thought of myself as not a founder, is not a person who is doing something that she wanted to be doing. It was almost like this stopgap until my husband figured his stuff out. Not that I wasn't going to work, but just like, I don't know. It was a really weird mindset. So anyway, I didn't get that job, but I did end up redoing my website. And you know what? My current partner changed my business. So it's like, you can't rely on, at least I couldn't in New York, I couldn't rely on my best freelancers because they weren't loyal. Like I remember 2 days before a shoot, I had a huge shoot, and my best guy, Nick, was like, Patrice, you're going to kill me. I can't do your shoot. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You can't do my shoot. He goes, I just got a job for 2 months out in LA. Yeah. I need to be there tomorrow. Sorry. I mean, and I was just like, I can't run a business. This is not a business. It's like, I'm just a hired. Yeah.
So you said you got a partner. When did that come about, and how did that?
Oh, this is also a good learning lesson story. So, yep. And you get it. Well, I mean, whenever you're starting out, like you say yes to everything, or at least I was saying yes to everything for bad and for good. And some of it was, I should not have said yes to. And I remember it was April, and this was I had a really scary 6 months where I literally did not make money for 6 months. I just had like no new business. It was like, I probably had 20 proposals out and nothing was stuck. It was just one of those moments where you're like, what am I doing? Like, and I remember it was one of those months, and there was a small like hair brand. And she's like, this is what I have, and I want to do like these Instagram videos, like 2 how-to videos. And what she had, I mean, that would barely pay for like one camera person for a half day, let alone 2 how-to videos produced. And she came from Bumble and Bumble, so she had a high level of quality. So long story short, I took this job against better judgment, and I ended up bringing on like my 19-year-old, like this kid I met on Instagram who's really talented, doing like party videos, but like not brand videos. But I paid him like $100 because like there was no money to be made. So we do the shoot. It was totally like it was just craziness. And so we did the shoot, and he could not get the edit. Bless him. He's literally, when I say he's 19, he just turned 19. He's so young. And he goes, he couldn't get the edit. And so I kept going back to the client, and the girl is like, Patrice, I love you. I want my money back. I can't use these videos. I don't want, and I can't believe I have to say this to you because I really like you personally, but this is business and this is bad. And I remember I was at my co-working space, and I was like, holy shit, like this is, and she was in a circle in New York where we were everyone's connected. So I'm like, I can't give her money back. Like, so I said to her, give me 24 hours. Okay. Like, give me one more stab at this. And then if you are unhappy, I will give you all your money back. Okay. During that week, I had met this guy named Adam, and through an acquaintance, and we had met for coffee, and I almost canceled on him because I was just being annoyed. I'm like, I feel like meeting it. And I didn't cancel on him. And he came from Jersey to Dumbo, which is like all the way where I live in Brooklyn. Yep. And we met for coffee, and he goes, anytime, he had his own production company in New Jersey, but different. He worked with different clients. You know, he didn't work, and I worked with a lot of like lifestyle and more like female founded type businesses. And his genre was more like local, right? Like the car dealership and like restaurants. And he had a great business, but it was just different. And he's like, anything you need, like, let me know. And I remember being like, okay, I don't understand how we do kind of the same thing, but cool. Nice to meet you. And I remember I got off the phone with this client, and I called him up and I'm like, hi, remember when you said like if I needed anything? And I explained the situation. He's like, give me all the files. I got all the files to him within 5 hours. He returned the most just beautiful content. Like just what I sent it to her that night. She called me. She's like, oh my God, this is amazing. She's now my biggest supporter. So that's how I met Adam, a random coffee person, and he ended up saving my ass. He didn't even charge me. I tried to give him money. He's like, nope, I'm not going to charge. He's my main partner. I just feed him business. I just like, he's my only, and so I tap into his crew and team. He has
like your shooter and editor then?
What'd you say?
He's your shooter and editor?
He has a team. So he's like the main guy, but he's like my client head, but I like brainstorm with him. Like we think of business ideas together, but he has a set group of people that he hires full time. Those are his full-time employees. So I just contract him, so to speak.
Right.
But they're like my team. We've been doing this model now since like 2017. And it's the only reason I realized like I can't be relying on freelancers.
Yeah.
You know, you know what I mean? Like, sure, occasionally, but I need to be able to say yes to Lego on a whim and know that the quality delivered is going to be at Lego standards. And what I was doing before is like bringing in like 19-year-olds being like, hey, like, I hope this is, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, then Adam did exactly what you did, and he pounded the pavement, and he was there, and he striked while the iron was hot. And now he got a great partner with you. So.
Yeah, and we're different. You know, he's got a different type of market. He has different skill sets, and I have access to different businesses that he wouldn't be able to get into. Right. So it's a really good partnership. And so it's the way that my little tiny video agency company is able to run and churn, and like it's also why I'm able to not have to be running around on shoots while I have a newborn. You know, like I have Adam and his team, my team for that. But then COVID hit last year and it kind of blew everything up. So I'll pause and let you.
Well, okay. So that's a nice segue because, you know, when we reconnected, you know, what I saw, because I didn't really know any of that you just told me, you know, prior to this. But when we reconnected, I saw your boot camps and your masterminds on Instagram. So was COVID the one that drove you to develop these more DIY courses?
So yeah, no, it's interesting enough. So so COVID hit, let's say last March. So yeah, so 2020 March.
Yep.
In January of 2020 last year, I literally woke up with a panic attack, and I'm not like an anxious person at all. Like I don't have any. I'm like, because I knew I wanted to have another baby. Like I was trying to convince my husband. Like so, I'm like, I cannot be running to production shoots when I'm 60. Like my whole income is based on what I kill. I'm like, I am tired. Like I don't want to, just the sales cycle of like these larger, you know, the larger brands, there's lots of pros and there's lots of cons, and these smaller projects, it's the same. And it was just like, you know, I was focusing all my energy on like, you know, not even high end, but like just kind of a mid-market video package, kind of like that 30 to 50K range, right? Where in theory, you know, you get like 5 to 10 of those, and like that's like a decent business, right? But to get those 50K jobs, it's not like, you know, you gotta, it takes a while, and the sales cycle's longer, and then the expectations are higher, and the amount of money you're making for the profit margin is like, I'm like, is this even worth it? So I started being like, I need more revenue streams. I only have one revenue stream, and that's like not a good business model. So before COVID hit, I had already been thinking, I need to start like figuring something out. So I follow this woman on Instagram. I had no idea what she does, but she randomly like commented once on my story, just like hey, oh, that's so funny. And she didn't know that I was like, I have a legit girl crush on her. So like a crazy person, I voice messaged her in her inbox. I'm like, oh my God, I love you. Like, I didn't even know you followed me. Like, I've been following you for 6 months. Like, I don't even know what you do, but you have the best content. But she talks back to me. She goes, hi. And you know, she's good. She's like, oh, she goes, well, what do you do? You know? And so we started talking. It turns out she helps female service-based entrepreneurs scale their businesses, their online businesses, and she helps female service-based entrepreneurs monetize their knowledge online. And her biggest specialty is taking female entrepreneurs from the 6 to the 7-figure mark. And she has this program. It was a $10,000 program. And I remember at the time being like, 10,000. She's like, and I remember she was telling me about it. And she goes, yeah, I think you'd be perfect for it. So we set up a Zoom, and I remember being like, this is weird. So we set up a Zoom call in January. And I remember when she told me it was 10 grand, I almost like fell out of my chair. Like the biggest investment I'd ever made is like my website, which is like $4,000. I mean, $10,000.
Right.
And I remember I was talking to Ollie about it. And I'm like, I just feel this there's something in me that like I need to figure out how to do something different. And anyway, I did it, and then COVID hit. So for 2 months, I was in an intense mastermind where every day I learned how to monetize your knowledge and how to set up a program or how to think about it. And so when COVID hit, I had already been working on a product. So it was almost serendipitous. So I had launched, anyway, so I learned how to do this from this woman, and I'm still friends with her. I was just on her podcast the other week. Like her program changed my life, because even this past year, we were just doing taxes, you know, what I made off of, it's not passive. I think passive is a misnomer. It's so much work. It's at some point, maybe you're passive, like years in, you can automate, but in the beginning, it's more work than anything. Sure. But, you know, it was like 20% of my yearly revenue, which is small, but it's proof of concept. I'm like, oh, people want to know how to do video. People can't afford how to do video. So it's kind of like, to me, there's this market now. So that's sort of when COVID hit, it was just like a godsend, because I was able now to run video boot camps and masterminds and help other entrepreneurs use video to grow their own businesses. So
I know that you had recently had to kind of take a little bit of a pause to have your third boy. What's his name? Cass?
His name is Cass. Yeah, Cassian. My husband's last name is Jones. It's like so boring. So you can't have like Mike Jones or like Fred Jones. I mean, Fred Jones isn't bad, but you know what I mean? Like you can have a little bit of, so yeah, Cassian Jones. And he was born on the same day as my father-in-law, who is the best human alive. And so Cassian has Ian in it, and his name is Ian. So
nice. So, yeah. So you took a little bit of break from the boot camps or masterminds, and now you're back. So do you have like set scheduled courses, or is it kind of come in and DIY? Tell us a little bit about your video content now.
Yeah. So last year was, to me, it was just proof of concept. A lot of people, that what I see and that I've learned in this, I feel it's a whole new world. It was like I lifted a rock and I was like, oh my God, there's people doing all these things on the internet and people are buying. It was just like this, what am I doing? So what a lot of people do is, in their brain, they're in their bubble, right? Where they think they have an amazing idea because it's either in a vacuum or, you know, but they spend a lot of time on content and they make it really nice, and they spend hours, weeks, months, you know, coming up with homework or systems or video, and then they release it and no one buys. And the way that I was taught to do it is completely opposite. You do not make a single piece of content until someone has already bought from you. So everything I ran last year was live. So I only did live boot camps and live masterminds. So I would have to sell that before we launched. And the first two, I would make the content up week by week, depending who was in my class. So I would ask them, what do you want to know? Like, what industries are you from? And then I would make the content, I don't want to say on the fly, but on the fly. So by the end of last year, I had done that like 6 or 7 times. So after running it 6 or 7 times, you start to see what people like, what people don't like. So at the end of this past December, so like 2 months ago, I started taking some of my live content and turning it into modules. So for the first time, again, this is me, I don't want to jump in, but I have like a little mini course. So it's like a lower price point, and it's taking my mastermind that I teach and taking like a chunk of it and teaching it's all about how to inspire and attract your audience through using your phone and video.
Yep.
So I'm turning that into a mini course. And again, I'm going to test the water, see what people say, if people buy it. And then from there, I'm currently working on like another DIY course with my partner, Adam, that's going to also incorporate more technical, like how to edit, how to, yeah. So this year is all about automated systems and then running less masterminds, because running live masterminds nearly killed me last year. I ran like 7. It's a lot of work. And the hardest part is the marketing funnel of getting new eyeballs into each cohort, because new people have to constantly be knowing about you, and it's a lot. So, and that wasn't my core business. So hopefully this year I want to make a transition where I'm like, last year I was 80-20. This year I want to move more towards like 50-50. Okay. And maybe the year after, 80-20 with 80% being online revenue and then like 20% clients.
And so that was going to be kind of my next question. So do you like that idea of shifting more towards that scalable model of helping the smaller budget, clients versus going after the whales all the time?
Yeah, I think, and you could probably attest as well, having those whale clients are awesome because you learn a lot and you get a first row view into how like a brand like Amazon and Lego and Amazon, Netflix is thinking, right? Which is awesome. But am I really helping Netflix? Probably not. Am I really helping Amazon and like, the product videos that we do for them? Probably not. I mean, sure. But it was the small clients. It was when I would work with, the small brands and the small course creators that did outsource a lot of their production to us that I felt good. I'm like, I'm actually helping them. And then it started to bother me when I would have a lot of young entrepreneurs, I don't mean young age-wise, but just like entrepreneurs young in their business, who would come to me and be like, hey, like can you make me video? And I just knew, I'm like, I can't, because I can't make the numbers work. And I know what you need, but I can't. You're going to have to like go to a shooter editor that you find, on Facebook or Craigslist, or maybe someone that can do it cheaper for you. And I was like, I'm turning away so many people that actually need the help. And so that's when I did start, before the COVID even hit. I'm like, how can I put because you also think too, like, well, every brand is so custom. I can't possibly teach people how to make video because it's so unique. And you know what? It's actually, there's a foundational narrative to all video content, and it has to do with good storytelling and good characters and good writing and finding out what people like to watch. And all those skills are teachable. So it made me realize that, like, small businesses don't have big brand access, but they need it. And so I'm that liaison of like, I have access to these big brands, and we just take what we're sort of doing there in the field, and I take the stuff that can be applicable to like a solopreneur who has no marketing budget and is going to have to, probably show up on Instagram stories all the time and show their face, because that's just what they're going to have to do.
Cool. Well, I like it. We're doing the same thing here at Matic, and so I'm excited to, in the next couple of months, to show you what we've got going on here. But look, I think what you're doing is great. I've enjoyed your content. I almost signed up for one of your boot camps because I was just interested to see what it was like. And then
I'll give it to you. I'll send you. No, honestly, you know what? I need people. I just realized too, I probably should have betaed this mini course, and I didn't, just because was so much going on. But no, I'll send it to you like when it's up and ready. Like it'll be my comp. So
well, that'd be fun. And I was thinking about the live ones when you were doing those, but because I like the human interaction part of it. And but yeah, I totally get, and I'd love to check out your course, and I'll show you ours when we get that going. But because we have the same struggles here, we get the bigger clients, but then what we're doing is we're turning those into learning lessons and giving that to smaller clients that can utilize that on their own. And it's all about the strategy and how you roll it out. And there's a lot of systemizing that can be done, even though it doesn't feel like, that you can. But once you pull it all back, you definitely can.
Yeah, no, I know. And I do think like just video content in general, for whatever reason, it just really overwhelms people,
Yep.
because people tend to think, I mean, rightfully so, when you think of video, you think of the gear, you think of the lights, and you get so hung up on the technical side of the video making process that you forget that a beautiful video does not make a converting video, or a beautiful video does not equal an interesting video, an entertaining video. So it's sort of this misnomer that it has to be beautiful, when I think social has shown us that the raw and the gritty and the just being yourself and people showing up as themselves is really attractive. And I think when you're a small business and a small brand, fortunately, unfortunately, if you're the founder, you have to get out there, because people, especially Gen Z, like you want to know who is behind this brand, like those faceless brand worlds of like the 90s, and that's just not in anymore. Like you have to show up. So, which
Yeah,
is good, because so many more people now need help with video making.
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. I really appreciate you taking the time to come out with it. You have an infectious personality, so I can see why so many people want to
Oh, thank you.
consume your content and consume your stories. So, yeah, thanks so much for.
Did you do the fight or fight song?
I have no idea what the song
Be
is.
fighting man, a fighter. Okay.
Well, that takes us back because you graduated '98, right?
Younger, but you don't need to date us. Like, yeah, I already
Oh,
feel.
come on, come on. Now we're at the age where we can embrace it. We can embrace the knowledge that we have, and
Oh my god, I have a newborn. I'm like, oh my god, I'm an old mom now. I like was like a young mom, and now I'm like an old. Though in New York, people like are old moms, so it's fine.
it's it's awesome. Everybody's got their own journey, and yours is pretty fun. So thanks for sharing it with us today, and have a good rest of your day. Thanks, Patrice.
Yeah, no, thank you. This was really fun. Anytime.